Hello, this is Eye on Africa here on France 24 with me, Yinko Etare. Here are the top stories. Mali pays tribute to its Defence Minister Sadio Camara, who was killed during last weekend's unprecedented rebel attacks against the military regime. Camara had been a key architect of the military government's security partnership with Russia. Sebastian Sawe gets a hero's welcome in Kenya after making history in London in the marathon by becoming the first athlete to run a sub-2-hour race. And the world gets a fresh look at Winnie Mandela in a new Netflix documentary. The Trials of Winnie Mandela explores everything from her activism to the scandals that shaped her public image. Welcome to the programme. Mali has laid to rest its Defence Minister Sadio Camara, who was killed during last weekend's unprecedented rebel attacks against the military regime. Camara was seen as a key architect of the government's security partnership with Russia. Both sides now grappling with the major setback brought by the coordinated attacks by jihadists and separatist rebels. Edward Maxwell has more.
A moment of quiet reflection under tight security. After the violence of the weekend, the military junta projected a united front on Malian state television at the funeral of the country's defence minister, Sadio Camara. Camara was killed in an attack at his residence in Kati last Saturday during 2 days of fierce fighting, which pitted the army against separatists and jihadists. It was the largest assault on the country in nearly 15 years, targeting the military junta and its Russian paramilitary backers. An officer who rose to the rank of Lieutenant General, Camara was seen as the mastermind behind the junta's pivot to an alliance with Russia after falling out with former ally France. First with Wagner mercenaries in 2021, then with their successor Africa Corps under the Kremlin's direct control. These pictures show him receiving one of several Russian arms deliveries at Bamako airport.
Mali's defence and security forces, now back on their feet and self-reliant, command respect again and project a positive image of Mali to all partners.
Russia on Thursday said its forces would stay in Mali, rejecting a call from the Tuareg separatists for Moscow to withdraw. During the weekend assault, the rebels were able to capture the key northern town of Kidal. They've since announced that they intend to push forward and conquer the north, declaring that the country's ruling junta will fall.
Kenya is celebrating a historic sporting moment. Marathon runner Sabastian Sawe has been giving a hero's welcome after becoming the first athlete to run a sub-2-hour marathon in official race conditions. At State House in Nairobi, President William Ruto hailed the feat as a defining moment in human endurance. Clarisse Fortuné reports.
A red carpet for a record breaker who just made history in London. Sabastian Sawe stunned the athletics world last Sunday, clocking 1 hour, 59 minutes and 30 seconds, the first sub-2-hour marathon ever achieved in official race conditions. He was celebrated as a national hero at the State House, his family and coach looking on. President William Ruto called the achievement more than just a sporting victory.
On behalf of the nation, the people of Kenya, we want to say a very big congratulations. 2 hours is not merely a sporting triumph. It is a defining moment.
The night before, Sawe had received a celebratory welcome upon his return, dedicating his big win to the people of Kenya.
I'm happy to celebrate this win with you. I didn't expect it to be this way. I'm very grateful for everything we did in London. I didn't do it for myself alone. I did it for all of us.
The president awarded Sawe a 5 million shilling cheque, more than 33,000 euros. And in return, Sawe gave a piece of history, a signed running shoe, part of the pair he wore during that record-breaking race. Kenya saluting the man who pushed the limits of human endurance.
Next, she's one of South Africa's most recognisable and polarising political figures, and now the world is getting a fresh look at Winnie Mandela in a new Netflix documentary. The Trials of Winnie Mandela chronicles the life of the activist and former First Lady of South Africa. The 7 episodes explore her role as a freedom fighter and the persecution she endured under apartheid. It also delves into the controversies and scandals that shaped her public image. Well, let's bring Ivo Iki Kovacs, who is the founder of the African Oral History Archive. He's also the executive producer of the documentary. Ivo, thank you so much for joining us on the programme. It's great to have you. This is, of course, now the second docu-series exploring the life of Winnie Mandela. Tell us why you decided to get on board with this project.
I had the great privilege of knowing Winnie for many years, and I realized that she was an absolute enigma. She was neither saint nor sinner. She was a very complex human being. And I wanted to be able to tell the story of the struggle in South Africa through her eyes. You know, the struggle in South Africa is a metaphor for every freedom struggle that has happened in Africa and elsewhere in the world. And I felt that by giving Winnie the opportunity to tell her story in her own words, it would give future generations of Africans an opportunity to understand exactly what it was that we fought for, exactly the suffering that people like Winnie went through to achieve what we achieved. And I felt that it was a legacy that we needed to give to future generations, not only of Africans, but of young people around what these struggles were really about.
Well, we know that in South Africa, she's often referred to affectionately as a mother of the nation. She's also referred to that beyond South Africa, but she was a very decisive figure, wasn't she?
She was an extremely divisive figure, and I think if you watch the documentary, you will understand that she was she was considered to be a huge danger to the apartheid government. They couldn't eliminate her because that would have caused a revolution, and they therefore had to manage her. They had to discredit her. They had to build a false narrative around her, which they did very effectively. Winnie, while everybody was watching the struggle from exile or from prison, Winnie was on the ground actually fighting this war. And she was considered to be the mother of the nation because she truly was on the ground being a mother to the people that were fighting the war every single day. And the apartheid government did not know how to handle her because she was scared of nothing. And she demonstrates very effectively that one woman on her own can truly change the world. And I think that this is the message that we want to give to a whole generation of young Africans, that their voice is important. We fought for a voice, and that voice needs to be used effectively.
Well, Winnie sadly passed away in 2018. She would have been 90 this year. Talk to us about the timing of the release of this Netflix documentary.
This documentary has been more than 11 years in the making, and Winnie was extremely generous with her time, and we covered the latter part of her life. The docu-series was almost ready to release before Winnie passed away, but what happened is that the story continued. As divisive as she was during her life, her death was one of the most unifying events that had happened in South Africa since the elections in 1994. And it's quite bizarre that in her death, she became the unifying force that she could never be during her life. And I wanted to release this documentary now because we're at an inflection point in Africa. We're at a point where we're about to have the biggest young population in the world. We're at a point where all of the future generation of leaders that are coming into power right now are of a generation that was born free. This is a generation that didn't live under colonialism, that didn't live under apartheid, and they truly don't know their history. And through Winnie's eyes, we're able to show this history so that this generation can plot their future based on a very honest depiction of where we come from and our very troubled past.
We of course can't talk about Winnie Mandela without talking about Nelson Mandela. She fought alongside her husband against apartheid, but it has to be said that she spent so long without him. He was in prison for 27 years.
Winnie was truly on the ground fighting the fight in his name. And, you know, there are many people that truly believe that Nelson Mandela would not have been even thought about or known if it wouldn't have been for the fact that Winnie carried his flag and carried his memory and carried his name. The fact that she was without him for so many years was hugely problematic for her. This woman, as tough as she was also very, very soft. And, you know, this docu-series is not only a drama, it's not only a detective story, but it's also a tremendous love story, because there was great love between the two of them. But they sacrificed that love for the cause. They sacrificed that for the politics. And this docu-series is a very human story, and it's a story of great resilience under incredibly difficult conditions. And it's also a very sad story, because the love affair between Nelson and Winnie was very, very real. But it had to end at a point where Winnie became inconvenient to Nelson's entire reason for existence, and she was sacrificed as a result. And this comes through in the documentary very, very clearly in Winnie's words. I love the fact that Winnie was so generous and able to be so honest with the viewer in a way that you wouldn't have expected from a woman of steel that she truly was.
Ivo, great to speak to you. Thank you so much for the opportunity and an extraordinary documentary for an extraordinary life. Thank you so much for joining us on the programme. I'm going to move on now. In Ethiopia, Ethio jazz goes beyond music, helping unite communities affected by conflict and poverty. Maliku is an internationally recognized jazz musician and dancer, but had humble beginnings growing up in poverty on the streets of Addis Ababa. Maliku is also the founder of the Fendika Cultural Center, where he preserves Ethiopian heritage. Maliku has turned Fendika into a hub to grow local artists into international artists. We're going to end on these pictures now. Stay with us here on France 24.